Believe it or not, Baylor actually still has a chance to win the Big 12 championship this year. And when you look at what needs to happen, it's not as crazy as you might think. Let's get locked on Baylor.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello there, Bears fans. Welcome to another episode of Locked On Baylor, brought to you by Game Time, presented by the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. I'm your host, Cam Stewart of ESPN Central Texas and the Cam Show on YouTube. I appreciate you making it your first listen today and every day. We've got the roadmap for Baylor winning the Big 12 championship this year. Plus, the star of the show, Jake Spavital, is he only going to be in Waco this 1 year? He's going to have some big-time suitors, I think, at the end of this season. And what does Bryson Washington have to do to impress these good folks at the Big 12? Seriously. All that and more coming up on this episode of Locked On Baylor. It's fun. They got the bowl eligibility. Things are clicking on all cylinders. People are talking about the 8-4 Baylor Bears to round out the regular season. But we know the great years in Baylor history usually end up with Big 12 championships. Some of the best seasons this program has ever had has ended with Big 12 championships. Now, that might be a bit far-fetched for this team, right? I mean, they started 2-4. There's no way a 4-loss team can win the Big 12. Well, they actually can. In fact, there are a couple different scenarios for Baylor to get to Arlington for the Big 12 championship game. Of course, once they get there, anything can happen. But it's wild to be thinking that a team that could finish 8-4 in the regular season could be playing for the conference championship. Is it good for the conference? I don't know. Don't really care. It'd be great for us, right? And it goes to show you that any given Saturday, anything can happen in this league. And we have seen this all season long. You guys have to bear with me, no pun intended, a little bit here as I go through this. Stan Bino is the one who's put this out on Twitter at StanBino7, has put it in the whatever, the B-ball, not nothing, whatever it is, little algorithm here, computer here, to see how Baylor can get to the Big 12 championship game. And the way I'm going to break it down is who you're going to need to root for both this upcoming week, that would be November 23rd, and then next week, November 30th. And where the rooting interests will lie. Now, this first one would set up a rematch that everyone just said was hypothetical last week, but would set up a rematch between Baylor and Colorado in Arlington. Boy, would that be something. So here's who you'd have to root for this week. You would need Arizona State to beat BYU. You would need Baylor to beat Houston, obviously, and Colorado to beat Kansas. Kansas State to beat Cincinnati. Tech to beat Oklahoma State. TCU to beat Arizona, Iowa State to beat Utah, and West Virginia to beat UCF. I can hear you guys right now like, oh, okay. Yeah. Well, that's going to happen. That's a pretty likely scenario. So this is what's crazy is if all those things happen, Baylor could be going into the final week of the season with a chance to play in the conference championship game. Of course, they need a lot of help, but all of those things should happen. The only thing I'm kind of worried about there is Arizona State BYU is a toss-up, right? Arizona State's a pretty damn good team, though. We're going to talk about them later in the show. And Kansas is playing some great football and playing for their lives as they go on to take Colorado. The other one should happen. Baylor should beat Houston. K-State should beat Cincinnati, and up and down the list. I can't spend too much time because we got 3 of these scenarios. So then November 30th, who will you have to root for then? Will UCF to beat Utah? Okay. Colorado to beat Oklahoma State? Obviously. Arizona to beat Arizona State? That's a little tough. Baylor to beat Kansas? Should be a good game. Houston to beat BYU? Don't love those odds. Do not love those odds. TCU to beat Cincinnati. Even that's not that easy. Kansas State to beat Iowa State. Okay, bit of a toss-up there. Pick them. And then Texas Tech to beat West Virginia, which could well happen, but those are 2 pretty evenly matched teams. So that second week, it starts to falter a little bit, okay? There is another one where you could have Iowa State versus Baylor in that championship game, but you would need both BYU and Colorado to lose out. Arizona State must lose to Arizona, much like the last scenario. And if Arizona State beats Arizona in that scenario and Kansas State beats Iowa State, then you'll have Arizona State versus Baylor in the title game. Whoa. And then Stan Bito pulls this out. There's even a chance for a butt bowl Big 12 championship, Baylor against Tech. What you would need in that is you would need both Colorado and BYU to lose out. Arizona State would once again need to lose to Arizona. That's the only real constant in all of these three, other than Baylor winning. Iowa State would need to drop one of their last two. And to remind you on what those last two are, they are facing Utah and then Kansas State and Farmageddon. And then Baylor and Tech will need to win out. Obviously, it's a lot that needs to happen. I'm not saying, hey, go book your tickets to Arlington in the first Saturday in December. I'm not saying that. A lot needs to happen. But considering the fact that we were so, like the broadcast was so locked in on West Virginia's 12% chance to make the Big 12 championship and how it was going to be cut in half if they lost to Baylor, the fact that we were so locked into that made me think that this is like a 1 in a million shot for Baylor to get there. And it's more like 1 in 500,000. Twice as likely as I thought. Okay. I mean, again, I look at that first scenario, and until you get to the last couple of games in that second week, that November 30th, like you're probably doing it. Like those things are probably happening this next week. Now, Kansas is a dangerous team. Again, I don't love as good as Baylor's doing right now, or as well as they're doing. I don't love the fact that the two teams remaining on your schedule both have 6 losses. And I'm sure there are some of you saying, like, that's a loser mentality. 6 losses is a lot with 2 games left to play. You should be happy to face those teams. But that means their backs are up against the wall. And Kansas is the hottest 6-loss team in America. They're the best 6-loss team in America. So I don't love that. And Houston, obviously, with their backs up against the wall this week, too, in a road game. I'm not saying that that's a great atmosphere at UH, at TDECU Stadium in Houston. Even for a night game, I doubt it will be a big-time atmosphere there. But there is a chance, if you are the positive type, the optimistic type, then maybe I would block off the morning and early afternoon of whatever that first Saturday is in December. It's got to be the 7th because November 30th is a game day. Maybe you are that positive about it. Maybe you really do feel that Baylor's going to win these next 2 games and that all these other things are going to fall into place, because things are falling into place already. They beat TCU for the first time at home in a decade. They won in Morgantown for the first time ever. They kicked the crap out of Tech. Maybe you're feeling this. And if you are, can I get some of that as well? I would say crazier things have happened, but I don't know. Bottom line is Baylor has needed help on the final day of the regular season twice for their 3 Big 12 championships. Remember, they needed Oklahoma to win in Bedlam in 2013 to set up that quasi Big 12 championship game that Baylor won against UT. That last game at Floyd Casey. And then in 2021, they needed some more Bedlam help. They needed Oklahoma State to beat Oklahoma so that Baylor could once again meet them in the conference title game. And it happened both times. Say a prayer. We Baptists, we love to do it. Say a prayer for these Bears, because they are going to need a ton of help. And they might need some prayers to keep their hottest coach on the staff right now in the building next year, because there are going to be some other programs that are going to be hitting up Jake Spavital's line. We'll tell you who that's going to be coming up next on Locked on Baylor. But first, this episode is brought to you by Roy. So Baylor fans, listen up. You need to download the Roy app. You've heard us talk about it all season long and how they're revolutionizing the NIL industry. Well, they allow you, the fan, to have a say in who gets the NIL money. And here's what I absolutely love about it. You get your money back if that player transfers. Roy is helping us keep our team intact, and it's actually good for the game long term. All right, Bryson Washington has just been going off the last few weeks. He deserves that kind of support, and you can show your support for Bryson by depositing a little appreciation into that player's account. To download the Roy app, you can see what the logo looks like if you're watching on YouTube, or you can go to joinroy.com. Now, let's spotlight our player of the week. It is Bryson Washington. Again, we're going to throw some money in his account on Roy. 8 touchdowns in the last 2 weeks. Doesn't get much better than that unless you're in the Big 12 offices. Every contribution counts. 10, 20 bucks. It all adds up, and it's going to help your favorite player stay put. So join me and show some love for Bryson this week and download the Roy app or go to joinroi.com today. Use the promo code LOCKEDON. Every athlete from every team is there. No purchase necessary. Go to joinroi.com for full terms. Roy, support the players. Change the game. Today's episode is also brought to you by Game Time, the only place I go to buy my tickets. I love toggling the all-in pricing tool, so that price I see is the price I'm going to pay. Plus, I get the view from my seat before I ever hit purchase. They've also got the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time is going to credit you 110% of the difference. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer servicing policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDON, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Boy, Jake Spavital has been a huge lift for this Baylor team. And it's credit to everyone, right? It's credit to Dave Aranda for turning this around. It's credit to the players, credit to everyone on the staff. You know, when I said the hottest coach on the staff, I almost immediately said Keenan Hall for what he's done in the recruiting game as the associate head coach for the Bears. But you can't argue with the golden touch that Jake Spavital has had. And it took a couple weeks, as we said it would. I said it on the show. It's going to take a couple weeks. And now this offense is firing on all cylinders. Now, that is going to bring some suitors, okay? FAU just fired their head coach today, Tom Herman, yesterday, Monday. They fired Tom Herman. Jake Spavital's got head coaching experience. The record wasn't that great, but he's a guy who's had successful offenses at every stop. Is that a place that looks at him? That was my initial thought. And then I saw some things on Twitter. I'm seeing it from some of the OU burners. I think my guy Travis Roeder had a comment on it as well. And that is that the University of Oklahoma is going to be looking for an offensive coordinator. And if they're not also looking for a head coach, then they'll really be hot on the trail of whoever the hottest name is at OC. And right now, Jake Spavital would be a slam dunk pick. And what's going on up at Oklahoma in their first year in the SEC is not good. Not good at all offensively. If only they could play my Maine Black Bears every week. But they can't. And so it's led to some pretty dismal numbers. They've obviously had some quarterback shuffling. The Jackson Arnold thing was not really working. They didn't like the way Seth Luttrell was running it. They fired him. It's now someone named Joe John Finley who's running that offense. And it's been one of the worst in the SEC. In fact, they are 15th out of 16 teams in touchdowns scored. They're 14th in rushing offense. They are last in yards per rush. They are last in yards per play. They are last in total yards, and they are last in total offense. The bottom of the barrel in the SEC. But boy, at least you don't have all those 11 a.m. games in the Big 12. Oh, wait, you do. And you got some Friday and Thursday nights mixed in there. And your offense stinks. It just means more, doesn't it? It has been mostly bust, not a lot of boom in that Oklahoma offense this year. Meanwhile, look at Baylor, and it's this offense that has really catapulted the turnaround. In this 4-game winning streak, they're averaging over 47 points per game. That's the top in the conference in that span. And when we look at just conference games, when Jake Spavital really kind of got this thing going, and Sawyer Robertson was in for all of them, in the Big 12 conference this year, in their conference games, they are third in rushing yards per game, 192. That's a huge jump from last year. Fourth in passing offense, 257 per game. Second in total offense and second in scoring offense, 37.6 points per game, just a hair behind those Colorado Buffaloes. So all those things, specifically the rushing part of it, that OU has really, really struggled in this year, Baylor has excelled. And they are just wearing teams out the last few weeks, specifically on the ground. And I talked about it coming into this year. Baylor was, how many teams did we have in the Big 12 last year? 14. Baylor was 13th out of 14 last year in running the football. They were barely over 100 yards per game. They were thanking their blessings every day that BYU was in the conference and rushing for like 80 yards a game. And I said, one of the big things, the most impressive things that Jake Spavital can do is he can come in and he can turn around a run game like that. He did it at Cal in 2023. They went from dead last in rushing yards per game to fourth in the Pac-12 in rushing yards per game, in a pretty good year for the Pac-12 in 2023. There's your blueprint. OU, who again is 14th in rushing offense and last in yards per rush. You can use a guy like Jake Spavital. Now, is that an enticing offer for Jake Spavital? I think that's an interesting question at this point. Obviously, if you're looking across the history of college football, most coaches are not going to turn down Oklahoma for Baylor. That's just the way it is. But in this situation right now, Jake's got a good thing going at Baylor. He's had a lot of one-year stops here, and it is an absolute pressure cooker at OU. And one thing that was a gamble for Jake Spavital coming into Baylor this year was the job security of his head coach. Even if he had a good year, it might not be enough. The coach might still have been fired with the way that Dave Aranda was on the hot seat. And I say was because it's just announced this past weekend that he's coming back in 2025. Now, if they go 3-9 in 2025, is he fired? Probably. That's not good. But you've got a coach in Brent Venables who, even though he has a better win percentage than Dave Aranda has at this stop, he is very much on the hot seat. And that is not going to be a fun situation to go into. And I don't know that Jake Spavital wants to do that 2 years in a row. And the other thing you got to remember is Spav does have some head coaching experience. And so what I mean by that is if he has another heater next year and they're scoring 35 to 45 points a game next year and they have a heck of a team, which Baylor could well have with all their weapons coming back, he could be a head coach in 2026 rather than just moving up the ladder a little bit as the OC at OU in 2025. But if this thing goes belly up at OU next year and he doesn't even really get a chance to implement the offense that he's hoping to run with the Sooners, and they don't even get that opportunity and get that momentum, then you could be out of a job again because the head coach is getting fired. So yeah, Oklahoma should make a real push. I'm serious. They should. They should make a push at Spavital for what he's been doing this season. But I'm not as worried as I would normally be in the vacuum of my OC at Baylor's having a really good year. And, oh yeah, Oklahoma needs an OC as well. I wouldn't be as worried as I would be in years past. But maybe that's just me. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Are you afraid that Jake Spavital might leave Baylor? Do you think OU is going to give him an offer he can't refuse? Drop that down in the comments. And one of Jake Spavital's great players this year has been Bryson Washington. Why does the Big 12 keep showing him some major disrespect? That's coming up next on Locked On Baylor. Let's talk the Big 12 and what problems they have with Baylor. which, by the way, if you're looking to keep up to date with this crazy, wacky conference and see all the different scenarios of who can get to this championship game, might I recommend Locked On Big 12 with our old friend Drake Toll. It is one of the biggest college football podcasts out there now. Drake does a great job with covering this conference, so can't recommend that enough, as well as Locked On College Football with my pal Spencer McLaughlin. He loves a bit of Big 12 chaos as well. So I would check those out to keep up with everything that's going on here in our great truck stop conference. I have a little bit of an issue with the Big 12 right now. I'm beginning to think that Baylor might be the Rodney Dangerfield of the Big 12. I don't get no respect. I was wearing my Caddyshack hat earlier. I should have kept it on for this segment. I've got it right there, but it would make me get up and you might see my bald spot. I don't want to do that. But they are the Rodney Dangerfield of the Big 12. They're not getting the respect. And mainly, I'm looking at the Big 12 weekly awards. It was dropped Monday morning. And for the second straight week, someone not named Bryson Washington was named the Big 12 Offensive Player of the Week. For the second straight week, it's an Arizona State Sun Devil. Got to say, I've been really surprised with Arizona State, as most of you have been as well. I did not think they were anything in this conference. And I thought kind of the same about Colorado and kind of about Baylor this year. And all three of those teams are churning out good seasons. Arizona State's one that could absolutely win this conference. But Jordan Tyson, their receiver, gets the Big 12 Offensive Player of the Week. Has a pretty good game. Don't get me wrong. It was a big win against Kansas State in Manhattan. Not a lot of people saw that coming, even some of the Arizona State truthers. But he caught 12 passes for 176 yards and a couple of touchdowns. That's a pretty good week. 176 is 176 and 2 touchdowns. That plays. That really plays. It just doesn't play as well as Bryson Washington did against West Virginia. And you could argue he should have won it last week, or the last game they played, when he had 4 touchdowns against TCU. He didn't get it. Well, how about this? 18 carries for 123 yards, 7 yards a carry, 3 touchdowns on the ground, 5 receptions for 59 yards, and a touchdown through the air. 176 and 2 touchdowns is pretty good. 182 and 4 touchdowns is even better. So what is the deal? Why can't Bryson Washington sew up this award? He didn't even get the Big 12 Offensive Newcomer of the Week. They gave that to a Sun Devil too. They gave it to Levitt, the quarterback. You've got to be kidding. What does Bryson Washington have to do to get some damn respect in this league? No, scrubby little Baylor, they're on their nice little win streak, but this is, we got to honor the new teams in the Big 12. I mean, come on. Is that what we're doing? Are we just appealing to the new 4 corner schools? Because there's no reason that Bryson Washington should not have won this award. I'm sorry. And maybe you make it a lifetime achievement because the last 2 games he's played, he has 8 touchdowns. There is no one in this league who has had 8 touchdowns in their last 2 games. And he didn't win Player of the Week for either of those weeks. What are we doing, Big 12? You trying to make the Hateful Eight more hateful? That's not in our blood. We're good Christians. We're not supposed to be doing that. But I've got some real beef with the Big 12. And then part of me is saying, you know what? Keep doubting. Keep doubting. Keep doubting us. These guys will just keep playing their butts off. Bryson Washington and Sawyer Robertson are all Big 12 players. They absolutely are. Since conference play started, it is Sawyer and Shador right there. And I know we love RJ Harvey at UCF, Bryson Washington. Last couple of weeks, he's been right there. Respect where it has been earned, where it is due. Bryson Washington, there's almost nothing more he could have done the last 2 games to earn Offensive Player of the Week. And you shut him out both times. There's something going on up there. Something going on in Irving, the Big 12 offices. I don't know. I don't know if it's because that McLean Stadium worker made Brent Yormark show his credential, and he's just sent the message down to the people who make these kind of selections and said, hey, no more Baylor. Nope. They got to earn that respect back. I don't know if that's it. Brett's a friend. Okay. I'm not going to accuse him of anything like that. We did talk during that game, so he's a friend. But there's something up. I don't know how you don't give it to Bryson Washington. And the best part about all of it is I'll bet Bryson Washington doesn't even care, because they went 2-0 in those games. And that's what Bryson Washington cares about. And we'll take that. We'll take that. And maybe we'll see you in the Big 12 championship, Arizona State. Crazier things might have happened, but Bryson Washington deserved this award. I'm gonna let Jordan finish. But Bryson Washington had the best 2-week stretch of all time, or somewhere close to that. He should have been Big 12 Offensive Player of the Week. Anyway, Baylor, also in Big 12 news, basketball is going to be getting some games on TNT starting next year, which is cool, I guess. I don't really know what else to do with that. Charles Barkley is going to be wherever inside the NBA is, so I don't think it's going to mean more Charles Barkley talking about Baylor, which is too bad. That would be really great, but maybe it is. I actually really don't know. It's nice to have the exposure that TNT will give, and not just caught up in the ESPN family, although that will be kind of a partnership, but like not caught up in ESPN, ESPN2, ESPNU all the time. I kind of like that. I like the changes of pace a little bit. Anyway, let me know what you guys think about Bryson Washington and his awesome 2 weeks, and why on earth he has not been named Offensive Player of the Week. What you think about Jake Spavital and his potential future here at Baylor. I say we do everything to keep him here. I mean, to be honest, do not mess with this good thing. And how likely do you think it is? Are you believing that Baylor is going to play for the Big 12 championship this year? If it is, if you are believing, please let me know why and how I can get onto your side in believing that they're going to play for the Big 12 championship, because I'd love to. I would really love to. Drop that down in the comments below. If you're listening, you can tweet at us at Locked On Baylor. If you're on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe. It helps out the channel a lot, guys. Like, it really, really helps. And be sure to ring that notification bell to get notified every time we're dropping a video on YouTube. And then it's going to be available wherever you get your podcast. Thank you so much for making it your first listen today and every day. We've got a Wicker Wednesday tomorrow with Sydney. That's coming up on your favorite show, Locked On Baylor.